So it's hard to know if it's blackmail or if it's because basically the same people behind Donald Trump are the same people behind Epstein. So even if they had a personal falling out, that doesn't necessarily wouldn't necessarily change the fact that their benefactors tend to have been more or less the same people. So it's also, I mean, it is possible that there is blackmail somewhere that they're hanging over Trump's head on this particular case and on with the case of Israel, or it's the case that a lot of the powers that pull the strings of the current Likud government.
In this explosive interview, investigative journalist Whitney Webb uncovers the hidden connections between Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and powerful intelligence networks. Webb explains how Trump was identified as a material witness in Epstein's files, with crucial evidence lost after the suspicious prison death of Epstein's butler. She explores the possibility that blackmail and shared benefactors have shaped U.S. policy, especially regarding unwavering support for Israel. Webb traces Trump's mentorship under mob lawyer Roy Cohn, his acquisition of Resorts International, a company with deep intelligence and organized crime ties, and his financial rescue by Rothschild interests. This discussion is essential viewing for anyone interested in the intersection of political power, organized crime, and intelligence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more groundbreaking investigations.
Yeah,
Sex
I
trafficking.
mean, no one can interview Alfredo Rodriguez now about why he chose to circle Trump's name or Briatore's name or any of these other figures. Courtney Love was also a circled name.
Interesting. What do we think that's about? Just she was there,
Hard
she
to
saw?
know. Some authors have speculated that, through her father, who was a road manager for the Grateful Dead, that she was sort of brought into this weird circle of intelligence link stuff, since authors more recently have sort of pointed to that band and some of these other groups in the 60s of having, CIA and other suspect connections, and sort of that a lot of the 60s counterculture was engineered for various purposes, but I'm not an expert on that, so I don't really want to speculate too much. But that's sort of been I believe Covert Action magazine, actually, and I forget who the author was, so sorry about that. But they have a whole article detailing alleged ties between Courtney Love and some nefarious actors, so I'll refer people to that. I read it once, but I wasn't, I didn't absorb
fair
enough,
enough.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but at the time, Trump was not a political candidate, and a lot of the other names that are circled are people that are well known to have been accomplices to the crime, like Maxwell, like Jean-Luc Brunel, Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's main benefactor. And we also do know, for example, that the most famous Epstein victim of all, who died earlier this year, Virginia Roberts, she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell while working at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. So there's a possibility that there may have been something there. But again, we don't really know because we can't ask the guy. But it is convenient that he cannot be asked. But I don't believe so. I was looking into it and was able to find out some other things, but was unable to find information on how he died in prison while serving a sentence related to this. What's also fascinating to me, though, is that 2015 is the year that Gawker starts to be sued into oblivion by Peter Thiel. And now we know that in 2014 and 2015, Thiel and Epstein were meeting regularly. And Peter Thiel was also an FBI informant during that time. I'm pretty sure in the case of Epstein, and it's sourced in my book, but I'm pretty sure it's the FBI admitted it, or another aspect of the government admitted it, because it came up in a court case. I forget which victim court case.
As Whitney Webb details, the connections between Trump, Epstein, and intelligence agencies run deeper than most realize. The suspicious deaths of key witnesses, the lack of investigation, and the enduring secrecy around Epstein's files all point to a powerful network protecting its own. Webb's research reveals how organized crime, intelligence, and political elites have worked together for decades, shaping policy and shielding themselves from scrutiny. This segment dives into the mechanisms of power, blackmail, and influence that continue to impact global politics. Stay tuned for more expert analysis on the hidden forces behind the headlines.
So it's hard to know if it's blackmail or if it's because basically the same people behind Donald Trump are the same people behind Epstein. So even if they had a personal falling out, that wouldn't necessarily change the fact that their benefactors tend to have been more or less the same people. So it's also, I mean, it is possible that there is blackmail somewhere, that they're hanging over Trump's head on this particular case and with the case of Israel, or it's the case that a lot of the powers that pull the strings of the current Likud government in Israel and, Donald Trump's administration have a lot of overlap. A lot of people have used my book and tried to say that I authoritatively say that Epstein was Mossad. And I definitely do argue for an Israeli state connection there. I also argue for a U.S. intelligence connection there. But essentially, what the thesis of my book is that during World War II, organized crime in the U.S., specifically the National Crime Syndicate, which was the Jewish American mob, in the Italian mafia, which then the main leader of the Italian mafia of this faction, and after World War II gets deported to Italy, and he sort of sets up shop there. They merge with intelligence interests, mainly the precursor to the CIA and American intelligence, and then that's sort of how the nexus behind Jeffrey Epstein and this broader network begins. And of course, a lot of those Jewish American organized crime interests are intimately involved with the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948, specifically the arming of the Haganah and other armed paramilitary groups that enacted the Nakba and led to the creation of the state of Israel in 1948. And not just organized crime figures, but also some of these organized crime linked oligarch families like the Bronfman family, also involved in that, for example. And basically, I explore how these networks developed in these various countries and argue that this is really a transnational power structure. So if I explain how that relates to Epstein in the book, but unfortunately, I kind of had to rush my book out at the time I was writing it because of a deadline. And so I didn't get to explore really Trump's ties fully to that. I did to an extent by exploring the ties of his mentor, Roy Cohn, to that. But Trump specifically, I found information later about his, how extensive those ties were. So I guess as an overview, Donald Trump, was mentored by Roy Cohn was a mob lawyer. He sort of had one foot in the legitimate world, having ties to the Reagan administration and the Nixon administration, for example. But he was also a lawyer for organized crime families in New York. And if you look at his background, his dad ran this secret society that later Edgar Bronfman and Leslie Wexner's mentors and a lot of these figures were part of, called B'nai B'rith. And then one of Roy Cohn's mentors was this Italian businessman who was very closely tied to the mob, named Generoso Pope. And Pope's son was Roy Cohn's best friend growing up. And from Pope, who was very tied up with the Sicilian mafia and also very close, and also the Italian mafia in New York, he was also a big fan of Mussolini-era fascism and controlled Italian language newspapers in New York and used that to try and manipulate Italian-American votes. And he basically taught Roy Cohn this system called the favor bank, Roy Cohn called it, which is basically we see today now in Trump's art of the deal, which is sort of how to establish backroom deals. You do a favor for me, I do a favor for you. And it's really, explains a lot of how political power has worked in the U.S. for some time. It's, of course, not exclusive to these people, but you can see how these things have developed over time. And so, in the case of Trump, in around the year that Roy Cohn dies, he becomes the controlling shareholder of a company called Resorts International. So Resorts International has long-term affiliations to the same syndicate of organized crime, specifically the Jewish American head of it, Meyer Lansky. And Resorts International was also created initially. It was formerly Mary Carter Paint Company, which was is an acknowledged CIA front company. So basically, Donald Trump became controlling shareholder of this in '87. That's also the year, I believe, that he bought Adnan Khashoggi's yacht. And that yacht Khashoggi had used for sex blackmail purposes, as I note in my book. And then, Trump tries to expand with Resorts International his holdings at Atlantic City, New Jersey, but at the time they were trying to make the new Vegas, essentially. And of course, Vegas itself has a lot of historical um, organized crime connections, and so did a lot of the companies trying to make casinos in Atlantic City. But he eventually gets has financial issues with that, and in the early 90s has to be bailed out. He's going bankrupt, and he's bailed out by Rothschild banking interests. The main banker involved there, of course, is Wilbur Ross, who was Trump's Secretary of Commerce during his first term, and that appointment was seen as Trump sort of returning the favor in a way of him being bailed out by, the Rothschild Inc., essentially, in the early 90s. And if that bankrupt, if he hadn't been bailed out, then who knows if Trump would even still be around today as a businessman and a famous public figure.
To watch the full interview, check out the link in the description. Whitney Webb exposes the tangled web of connections between Trump, Epstein, and intelligence-linked power brokers. She highlights the unanswered questions, suspicious deaths, and the enduring influence of organized crime and intelligence in shaping political outcomes. We invite you to share your thoughts. How deep do these connections go? What will it take to bring true accountability? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share for more in-depth investigations into power, crime, and politics. SIM swap fraud is sweeping the globe, and your mobile security is at risk. Switch to Ifani and lock out SIM swap fraud and get the most elite mobile protection in the world. Ifani guarantees 100% protection from SIM swaps backed by a $5 million insurance policy. Stay secure with reliable coverage, free international roaming, and unlimited data. Trust Ifani to keep your communications and assets secure. Get military-grade protection, 24/7 concierge service, and a hassle-free upgrade. Click the link below for $150 off. Thanks for watching. Help support this channel and receive exclusive offers from one of our partners located in the description. We'll see you on the next one.